Before we get into the podcast, make sure to check us out on Facebook and Instagram at This Strange World Podcast and on Twitter at This Strange Pod.
Please note that this episode contains dark themes that some people may find disturbing for younger listeners.
If you think you might be sensitive to this kind of content, please listen with an adult or check out one of our other episodes.
With that said, enjoy the podcast.
Welcome back.
Oh, yeah.
I started talking right when I started talking. Welcome back to the show. Today we got a doozy for you. Chris has brought to us. He's going to talk about a strange thing in this world. Cults. Cults are very strange. Very interested in them. He's going to talk about a specific one. What are you going to be talking about, Chris?
This cult is really strange. This is called the People's Temple of the Disciples of Christ, which is commonly shortened as the People's Temple, which is also commonly shortened as Jonestown.
Ooh.
So we're going to be talking about the Jonestown cult. And I didn't know much about this, but when I started researching this,
Leah, do you know anything about the Jonestown cult?
No, I don't know. I heard something about Kool-Aid, but I don't know if Kool-Aid was before this or
Yeah, the only thing
stemmed from the Jonestown cult.
The only thing I know is that they say don't drink the Kool-Aid. Is all I know.
But what does that mean?
I think something's in the Kool-Aid. I guess we'll find out.
You're gonna find out.
I guess we'll find out.
So before I start, this incident at Jonestown, they say, resulted in the greatest single loss of American life in a deliberate act. And this is before the 9/11 terrorist attacks. So before 9/11, this was the greatest loss of American civilian life in the history of the country. 900 people died because of this thing.
900 people?
Wow.
900 people. So, if you want me to get right into it.
Yeah, let's jump right in. I'm curious to hear how they died.
Mm-hmm.
All these people.
So,
wait, what state was this in? Jonestown was the state, or the city, right?
Jonestown was a city in Guyana.
Where's Guyana?
It was like a.
Where's that?
It's in South America.
Oh, this isn't in America. This is like somewhere else.
Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into that. It starts in America and moves its way down.
Cool.
So, Jim Jones, he likes to be referred to as Father, so he would have his people call him Father.
Daddy Jones.
He was Daddy Jones was born May 13th, 1931, and he was the religious leader of the People's Temple. So the People's Temple was formed in Indianapolis, Indiana, when he was probably 20 years old. So I don't know, do the math. 1950s, this thing was made. They say that the roots of the temple were in Christianity and Bible studies, but he added a lot of socialist twists and communist teachings inside of his sermons. As it was becoming popular in Indiana, it became more controversial to the views of the state, and so they wanted him out. So he moved west to San Francisco in the 1950s, which at the time, very mirroring the times of now, there was a lot of racial tensions in the city and in the country. And his church was very inclusive to, Black lives, white lives, any lives. They gave him an award because he brought together so many Black and white lives in the same area. So they actually gave him an award for that.
He was woke.
Yeah, Daddy Jones, he was woke before woke was woke.
Exactly.
And so this attracted a lot of people. Like I'm reading this now, it says that his church had at its height 20,000 members of the community.
Wow. That's like a medium to large size liberal arts college. Not our college.
Yeah, exactly.
A large college.
I
think a large college. Could be an Ivy League. Continue.
So he had a lot of people were attracted to him and his cult and everything. So what he would do is he would sometimes pay for people's attorneys. He would pay for their food bills. He would just pay for their housing bills. Anything that the people needed, he was able to give it to them.
So he was Sugar Daddy Jones.
He was Sugar Daddy Jones. And this made him really influential in the area. So people would follow his every word because he took care of me. So I'm going to listen to him.
Yeah, it sounds almost like people were relying on him. Like he became people became reliant on him.
He was really relying. And in the beginning, he was fine. Like he was a good person. When they first started out in the 50s, he took care of everybody. Everyone loved him. And then in 1973, so this is about 20 years into this thing, the government was investigating the church because 8 members defected, and they started saying like, oh, well, he's like kind of crazy. Like they defected and they were talking about this thing. And then the IRS was looking at him because his church was not getting taxed because they were religious. The IRS was saying that their church isn't religious enough for it to be considered tax exempt. So they were looking at him for tax fraud and everything. I'm gonna kind of go back a little bit because this is what I said was important information. We're gonna go back a little bit because before he wasn't being investigated, he kind of had this vision in his mind about a perfect world, like a perfect socialist communist world that he wanted to make. So he
bought a piece of property in
Sugar
South
Daddy
America.
Jones.
Yeah,
Well,
he bought.
how did Sugar Daddy / Daddy Jones get all this money?
Oh, that's a good question. Well,
Right?
did people
Well,
give him money
donations
to join?
from the church. Yeah, people gave him money in the church.
Oh.
Because Leah,
But
you've never been to a church, but there's collection boxes and stuff.
no, I have been to church. First of all, you don't know that, but I have been to church. Not that I paid attention because I was a really tiny kid. I thought he was the one paying for all of their taxes and their supplies and stuff. And so now I'm wondering, since
Well, you have to
said,
That's
think.
a
So
lot of money.
you have to sort of think about how it was in the time. So this is back in the 50s. In
Mhm.
the 50s and 60s, where $5 would take you a long way, and he had 20,000 members. So let's say 20,000 each paid him $5. That's
But then they'd
$100,000.
have to keep paying him and paying him and paying him.
I mean, if he was
and
proving
then-
that he was helping so many people's lives and doing all these great things, people would probably
People would
people were starting to get
people looked at
brainwashed.
him-
Like, yeah.
People looked at him like a god because he was so if you look, so let's put yourself in the shoes of someone who's African American or black in the 60s, and you're in a community where you're accepted. You're gonna be like, yeah, like
True,
anybody,
yeah.
If
he's accepting
So,
everyone and
he's
doing all these
accepting
incredible
everyone.
things, people would be willing to give him money. And I think, yeah, that's the beginning of where he kind of started to brainwash them.
That's how he got him in. He lured him in with that promise of community.
Wow,
Okay.
yeah, very interesting.
Cool.
Do you have any numbers later about money or how much he ended up having at any point or no?
I couldn't find any of that stuff.
Yeah, that seems like they probably, especially because you don't know how much he was paying because of taxes, like that's probably something that's been up in the air. But anyway,
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah. So he bought a place in Guyana, and this is deep in the jungle. So this is like remote as remote can get. It's
Mhm.
like, I think they said it was 5 miles away from this place called Georgetown, which is where he got the idea of Jonestown. And that's the capital of Guyana, and he had some satellite places there, and he had some satellite places around the world. But he was building Jonestown in this very remote place, and so he sent like a couple hundred people down there, and they started building like this community, like houses, schools. They started building all that stuff up. And at the time, they said it was amazing. They said the life there, like it was fun. There was one interview that someone said that it's not work because he loves doing it, and he's getting up, doing what he loves to do. So now we're going back to the investigation I was talking about before, where the investigation started picking up and police were really looking at him and the government was looking at him like, this is a cult, like we're going to shut this thing down. So what Jones did is he fled down south to Jonestown. So let's say there's 100 people there. I don't know the actual numbers, but let's say that he sent 100 people before. Now he sent the rest of the 800. So now there was 900 people in Jonestown when he fled down there.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the difference before Jim and after Jim arrived they said it was huge. They said, so the workers before were working like 8-hour days, and now they're getting worked like 14-hour days.
These are the people that lived there before he got there?
Yeah, so the people that lived before he got there, like he got down there and he was kind of already at this point, like his mental health is going down a little bit just because of the investigation and everything. So,
when did the investigation? Did you say it was an IRS investigation?
It was an IRS, and it was a government thing.
Because of then all the different tax stuff?
No, because some people left. So he wasn't on the outside, he looked good. On the inside, he really wasn't that good of a person. And so 8 people fled to Canada, and they started talking about what life was like in the
So did the
church.
investigation start before he tried to move to South America? Or that was probably one of the reasons why he tried to move?
It's why he left.
Gotcha.
So he wanted to get away from that before the pressure got too great. They said that when he got there, it was like the workers were getting overworked, 14-hour days, only to have, so at nighttime, sometimes he would have hour-long meetings that would go way into the night, only for the workers to wake up at 6 a.m. in the morning and do it all over again,
Oh, yeah.
And the workers only had food for 100 people, and now there's 900, so the food was really scarce. Children were being malnourished. And then one of these things that Jim Jones would have is sometimes he would have these things called white nights. and that was when he would call the entire, like the meetings in the night, they were called white nights, and he would bring the entire 900 population into the center um, pavilion area, and he would just rant about socialism, about how everyone's out to get him. It was just nonsense preaching, and people would just be sitting there because some really loved him, and they were like, yeah, like they
Yeah,
are out to get you.
because they're like worshiping him like he's like a god, and he's
Right.
like he's like a religion. Yeah.
Right, and
He was a little paranoid. I feel like
he was paranoid.
Yeah.
I'll get into this later, but he ended up starting to stay awake to do these things. He would start taking like methamphetamines to stay awake, and so he was like drugged out on stuff too. And,
foreshadow.
yeah, it was it's a lot. So a lot of people compared it to living in North Korea, like a North Korean style lifestyle.
So the people who were there, it was against their will, or that didn't they want to live there?
Some yes, and some no. We're gonna get into that too. But yeah, so some did not want to be there, and if anyone tried to escape, they were captured by his armed guards, and they were punished by Jones and the guards. And some of the punishments that I found were they would hang people upside down through the night, and then sometimes they would place people down a well for hours at a time. So those were two of the things that I found that he would do. There were more.
Dang, if my pillow doesn't give me enough verticality, I can't sleep. I couldn't imagine being upside down for a whole night.
Upside down.
I already
and all the blood rushing to your head.
Yeah.
It's just so disorienting. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah.
So going back to where things got strange, where when you asked about if people wanted to be there or not, so the people who their relatives were down there started to get concerned. So they went to the U.S. Congressman of California, whose name was Leo Ryan. So they went to him, and he was like, all right, fine, I'll check it out. So he went with an NBC reporter named Don Harris, and there was a film crew with like camera people, some other writers, newspaper writers were going down. And then the family members that wanted to see if their family were okay, they all took a plane down to Georgetown, not Jonestown, but Georgetown, and then took a truck to Jonestown to see if they were okay and to check up on them and everything. And Congressman Ryan was looking for what the conditions were down there, because he was being investigated in the United States, and now he's being investigated down here. So they're like, all right, so something's up with this guy. And at first they were not welcome. They only wanted the congressman, and then they saw the camera guys, and they're like, no, we don't want any cameras here. We don't want anyone here. Eventually they were like, all right, fine, like you can come.
Wait, where did the cameras come from?
Leo Ryan, the congressman, went to Jonestown with NBC.
Oh, that he was like televising?
Yeah, so NBC sent a reporter. Don Harris was the reporter, and he had a film crew with like camera people, all that stuff. And then there was family members that came too.
Gotcha.
Do you think it was like a front kind of just like, because you know how businesses sometimes can be fronts for like...
What, it was a religious group as a front for a cult? Or for the money? I mean, I'm sure he was making...
Maybe for the money, yeah.
Money.
Yeah, I know nothing about this. And
well, Leah's onto something, because the full name of the Jonestown is actually the People's Temple Agricultural Project. So they called it an agricultural project, as in like, hey, we're just
like testing research. Stuff out.
Yeah, research. So Leah's onto something about the whole naming thing.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Before the congressman arrived with his crew, Jim Jones called another white night for the crowd, and he brought them all together, and he started preaching about how the NBC and the congressman were coming to take them away from Jones, and that they were trying to destroy the place that they built, which everyone was like, no, like we don't want him to come. So he basically made him out to be like the devil coming in. So everyone already hated the congressman before he even arrived there. And so he told everyone that they were supposed to be happy. So it's kind of like a dictator. You know how like Kim Jong-un was saying that you had to cry for his father's funeral?
Yeah.
It was kind of the same thing. He said, you have to be happy. Like you have to smile. Tell him that you don't want to leave. Everyone, because he knows people don't like it
Make it look ideal. Like,
right. Yeah. Make it look amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a note here that said he told them that they were to say that they were happy, and no one said they wanted to leave. And then this is my next sentence. Jones had been known to use meth to stay awake in the long hours of the night, and he became paranoid and started to lose his mind deep in the jungle.
I wonder how far. Do you know how far into the fact, like, how long were they in the jungle when this started happening?
well over a couple of years, I think. Because
Oh, that's a pretty big timeline.
one interview that I saw said that he started to notice the difference between Jones' arrival, like before and after Jones came, within the first 6 months to a year that he was there. So it took a little bit of time for people to kind of understand that maybe this guy was crazy.
Okay.
I feel like the jungle is creepy as is, let alone add methamphetamine or any type of drug, then it just gets that much more creepier, and you just get that much more paranoid. Like, God forbid I'm outside with my dog in my neighborhood and I hear something, I think, oh my God, like, I'm in a safe town, but I get really paranoid.
I would be definitely paranoid in the jungle without methamphetamines, really. And I can only imagine the addition of meth.
And keep in mind too that they're like remote in the jungle.
Yeah, like they don't have like, and also this is like the 50s or so.
Right.
That, like,
there's
no iPhones.
At this point, it was the 70s, I think. So this is at this point is the 70s. So you know, decades have gone by.
He's gained a following. They're remote.
The only communication Jones had was this radio system, this two-way radio system that he would talk to the settlement in Georgetown and the Jonestown, because there was like kind of like an embassy, like a Jonestown embassy in Georgetown.
Yeah, he was really establishing something.
Yeah, it was like a temple-run building and stuff. So he would have, you know, back and forth communication with them.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when the congressman arrived, he was met with hostility from the people, but eventually they let him come into the area of Jonestown. And then he said that after meeting with many people, he was convinced that no one wanted to leave. He got up to give a speech and he was like, you know, after being here and seeing everybody, some people think this is the best thing that's ever happened to them in their entire lives. So like they convinced him that there was nothing going wrong until it was at nighttime when he was going to sleep. Someone slipped a note in his door that said, help us get out of Jonestown. And it was like signed like with this guy's name, and there was a bunch of other people's names that they signed under the note. So he got that note and he was like, all right, so something's up. I'm going to get these people out of there. And then another note was slipped under the door of an NBC reporter who it kind of said the same thing. It said, help us get out of Jonestown. But the problem with what happened with this one was the NBC reporter was doing a story about Jonestown. So he went up to Jim Jones and said, I got this note. And he showed him the note that said, help us get out of Jonestown. And so now Jones is like, uh-oh, like people are trying to leave. So he sees this as an act of defiance.
I feel like the reporter kind of messed up in a big way just because I feel like people, in a way, confided in the reporter, and the reporter was like, oh, well, my project's too big a thing to quit on. I'm just going to go.
Well, he didn't necessarily. They created such a, Sugar Daddy Jones. Like, they created such a facade that people wanted to be there that the reporter had no way of knowing that there was other stuff going on that people didn't want to be there, which is why he was probably like, he probably didn't think too much of it. Also because it's the 70s. It's not like today's age where we know of stuff like this has already happened. Like, this is like a new thing, I guess, for this like cult leader to create his own society. Like, it's not like that was like a recurring thing that has happened before that people knew how to deal with it.
Yeah, and there was like some 900 Americans that were down there. Like, and people are like, where are my family members? Why did they run away? So they're doing like a story about it. So now he's like, oh, well, people actually want to leave. Like, Jim, what do you want to say about that? And he said, he was like, well, they're liars. And, you know, like liars, liars, liars. The weird thing was, so he told the camera guys to get out. And then he said, if anyone wants to leave, they can leave, like with their own free will. He said, like, anyone wants to leave, they can go leave, which was a lie because there was cameras going on. But he was like, they could leave on their own free will, which before, if you left, you got punished you got hung upside down and you were put in a well. So then the congressman kind of was like, all right, if anyone wants to come with me, come with me. And he got like 30 more people to come in and be like, I want to go too. So now like Jim Jones is looking at this, like 30 people are leaving. It's basically like they're stealing his children away from him. And that's what he saw. And they were like trying to destroy the thing. So now 30 people are leaving, which to him means 30 more stories are going to be told about my crazy ass, you know?
So yeah, he was concerned. He was not thrilled that 30 people were leaving.
And he was very mad too.
And also probably anxious, probably because of the methamphetamine.
Very anxious. And he was also, because Daddy Jones also has a lot of people that are following him. So now they're getting pissed off too.
Yeah.
So
it gets people like, wondering. Yeah.
They're like, my brothers are leaving because everyone thought of each other as family. And then, so one person got so mad, so that the congressman was going to stay longer and kind of get more of a story because to send back for a report. And someone came out with a knife and went up behind it and stabbed him in the, I think it was the chest or something, or he stabbed him
The
in the
congressman?
the congressman. They stabbed the
Gasp.
congressman in the somewhere.
Did
And
he
so
die?
the congressman,
Did he kill him?
what? No, he. Hang on.
Oh my God.
he survived the knife attack, but he goes, "My life is in danger. I'm gonna leave." And
Good
then
idea.
so three of the defectors pinned the guy with the knife down, and they like kind of took him out of the situation. And then they got on the truck and then left right there. So they had like a truck leave with the congressman, the 30 people that were leaving, and the camera crew and the reporter, and they went to the airstrip where the planes were. But so this is the problem. So the planes were in Georgetown, which means it's kind of far away, and they only had one plane, and they didn't expect 30 people to say, "I want to come too."
Ooh.
So they had to call the embassy, the U.S. embassy in Guyana, to get another plane to come, which would take another 15 minutes or 15 to 20 minutes to get there, which means that, you know, there's some time that something
They're
could
waiting
happen.
around, yeah.
Yeah, they're waiting around. They're sitting ducks at the airport.
Oh
And
no. Do you know how far away
Jones
the
knew.
airport is? This the airport in Georgetown?
This is the airport in Georgetown. Yeah,
Gotcha.
so it's far away.
Okay.
It's like 5 miles away. They got to drive. It's a long way. And so Jim Jones knew that now someone stabbed the congressman. People are going to get out. The story's going to get out. We have to stop them. So he got some of his armed guards. They got in a tractor and they went after the people that were in the trucks. At the airstrip, one plane was already loaded up with 15 of the defectors, and the congressman and the NBC crew, like the reporter and all that stuff, stayed behind to wait for the next plane. And while they were waiting for the next plane, a tractor full of armed soldiers jumps out and starts opening fire on everyone at the tarmac. So some people hid in the planes, some tried to take cover behind the luggage. So the NBC cameraman filmed the entire thing. So the congressman, the entire film crew, and the reporter were all shot.
So were all the 30 people that were trying to leave, they all got out?
They didn't all get out.
Some
a lot
of
of
them
them.
got out. Was it just those people? Who got out on the first plane?
The plane didn't leave yet.
Oh, they were
So
waiting
they were
for the
waiting for the
second
other
plane
plane to come.
before they would both leave?
Yeah, so the
Oh.
first plane was there. They loaded it up, and then while they were waiting for the second plane to come, and before the
Tractors pull
first plane
through
took
and
off,
say,
the
"What's
tractor
up,
showed up.
boys?"
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
man.
So they started
Oh my
shooting at the people
God.
in the plane. They started shooting. So I think about 4 people survived. Among the dead was the congressman, the NBC reporter died, the camera crew died, a lot of the defectors died, and then they went around to each person and started double tapping to make sure that they were dead. And while they were doing that, 3 or 4 of the defectors ran into the jungle and tried to hide in there.
Oh.
And then the armed guards went back to Jonestown and told Jim that the congressman had been killed. And now he's like, all right, it's over. The government's gonna find out. They're gonna send like the military over here. Like we're all gonna die. Like they're gonna kill us. So we did a conspiracy episode before. There's a couple conspiracies about why he had the congressman killed. One of them is because he needed a reason to do this mass suicide. There's another reason that he just didn't want the story to get out. But either way, he got killed.
So what do you think is between the 2 conspiracies that you just mentioned? Gavin, I want to hear
how did it all end? So they killed the people. The 4 people went into the woods or the jungle.
The 4 people went into the woods. It was over. So what Jim Jones did is he called. So the armed guards come back. They tell to Jim. They said, he's dead. The armed guard, the congressman is dead. The NBC reporter is dead. Like the whole camera crew is dead. Like the government is going to find out about this. Like it's kind of like having like Cuomo almost going down there, and then he's dead. Like a congressman was killed.
Yeah.
Like the U.S. isn't going to let that slide.
No.
So they were going to send their military down. So Jones was like, "This is it. This is it." So he called another white knight and had everyone gather into the pavilion. And he told them, he was like, "This is it. It's over. It's over." And he was so messed up at this point that instead of facing the charges of killing this guy, he wanted to take everyone else down with him.
Do you know how many people there were at this point that were with him?
It's hard to say. It's really hard to say. It was pretty divided. There was a lot of people that didn't want to kill themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get into that.
I was about to say, you're about
Um,
to spoil what happens. So continue.
I don't want to. Yeah. So a white knight was called. Jones knew it was over. There's recordings of him talking to the people, and he was like, "It's over. Like it's done." Like he also said, "I'm glad it's over." So he was trying to get people to get on board with ending it all. So what he did is he got Kool-Aid, purple grape flavored Kool-Aid, and he put in cyanide into the Kool-Aid and laced it with cyanide, so that when you
Oh
drank
my
it,
god.
you were killed.
And you can't. I
So
don't think you can taste cyanide. Like, I don't think it
you
tastes like anything, really.
this is really disturbing because I heard a recording from a woman that was on his side. So what they did is they killed the infant. Leah, cover your ears. They killed the infants first, and there was a recording that said the kids aren't screaming because it hurts; they're screaming because it's bitter tasting. So
Ooh.
the cyanide was a little bitter tasting, and
So
so
you could taste something. Yeah.
they killed the kids first, and then the rest of the people, like then they went up to the rest of the people, and they all gave them cups of grape flavored Kool-Aid, and they were drinking it. Some would drink it on their own because they were with Jim Jones, and then some didn't want to drink it, so guards would come over and forcibly put it in their mouths. If some people put up too much of a fight, they would actually just inject you with cyanide because there were injection marks on people's skin.
Mm-hmm.
So they would inject them with syringes of that.
This is too depressing.
Yeah, I know. This is a doozy.
Especially with everything going, this is just really depressing. Okay, continue.
So some didn't want to do it, but Jones tried to convince them, saying that death here is better than living 10 more days of this life. So he was very
But
far
that's like
gone.
his decision. He shouldn't be making that
Well,
for anybody else.
He was a religious leader. Like, they probably thought, all right, like, this is, like, we're going to heaven. Like, this is our purpose or something. Like, and also they've all, like...
But he didn't tell them there was cyanide in the drinks, right?
No.
So this is actually, I kind of glossed over this point. So some of the white knights that they would do.
The white knights are like his main followers, right?
No, they're not white knights like it's white night, like it's nighttime, like it's white nights.
Gotcha.
So it would happen at night. And so he would sometimes fill up just regular cups of Kool-Aid and didn't have anything in it. And he would test to see if people would actually drink it. Because he was pushing this whole time, he was pushing a mass suicide. He called it revolutionary suicide.
He was getting ready.
He was getting ready, and he was training the people to do it. And this was some of the things that they would do at the White Knights occasionally. So a lot of people actually drank the Kool-Aid because they didn't think everything was in it. And then when people started to drop, then they were like, "I'm out."
But it tasted different.
Yeah, but at that point, it's too late. Once you have a little bit of Kool-Aid, you're done. Cyanide,
yeah, because it's cyanide. Yeah. So some people caught on. Some people ran into the forest and hid. Some people hid under their bed. There was one woman that her story was she hid under the bed when he called the White Knight over the speakers. There's a conspiracy sort of like when the story first came out, they said it was an entire mass suicide, but the survivors saying it was a mass murder because there were people who had injection marks in their arms, and there was a lot of people that were fighting back, and they were like, "I'm not going to do it. Like, I don't want to do this."
How many people survived?
I don't know. I just know that I heard from around 4 people from the different sources that I had. I heard not a lot of people.
And that like about 900 people died? Is that what you had said in the beginning?
They said in total 909 individuals died in Jonestown.
Because of the mass suicide or just in general?
Because of the mass suicide.
Oh, gotcha.
All but 2 from apparent cyanide poison. The other 2 that didn't die. So here's my conspiracy. Jim Jones himself wasn't killed by cyanide, but he was killed by a gunshot wound to the head. So there's a lot of conflicting stories about what happened. Some people say that he shot himself in the head. His kids say he didn't do that, but they weren't there. The kids were away in Georgetown. Mm-hmm. They were playing a basketball game. They were playing a basketball tournament when the order was given out to kill themselves. And they said, "To hell with that! Like, we're getting out of here."
Yeah.
The kids were like, "We're done. We're not doing this."
Those are like his real kids?
Yeah, his real kids.
Oh.
Are they alive right now at the moment?
Yeah, they're alive.
I think
he had one adopted kid and then one real kid.
I think like he was planning that, but also I feel like he first took the cyanide maybe, but then he didn't want to have the pain that conflicted with the effects of the cyanide, so then he decided to possibly kill himself.
I feel like it's like a contingency plan of like, just in case. It's like a self-destruct button. Like, all right, just in case, we've trained everyone to drink the Kool-Aid, so, and then one day we might put a little something in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the conspiracy about the gunshot was some people say he did it, some people say that his nurse did it and then she killed himself, and then some people, and this is what I think someone grabbed a gun, like when there's confusion going on and everyone's dropping dead, someone grabbed a gun and said like "F you" and shot him in the head.
Firing shots, yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I think
It
happened.
happened.
Yeah.
A lot
Where
of people
did
think it
they
was
say
nurse.
where they found the gun, the location of the gun after everyone was
Yeah, they
dispersed?
said it was in front of him, like 2 feet away from in front of him.
Was there a
Yeah.
person in front of them? I'm getting so like
Yeah.
CSI investigative.
But I mean, like, someone could have tossed it down or.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like
They-
if you're under that much effect, if you fall and something falls out of your hand, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they say when you shot yourself in the head, you probably let go of the gun and it flew because of
Oh, because the pushback. Yeah.
the pushback. Yeah, so
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah, it's like the fact that he had this like contingency plan to kill everyone shows that he knew he wasn't doing something right. If he really believed he was doing the right thing, then why would he have this plan to, in the event of something like this happening and potentially word getting out of what he was doing, kill everyone involved?
Mhm.
Like that means he like knew what he was doing.
It's weird. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that I saw that they were saying like that this was like a doomsday cult, so they were like getting ready for the end of the world, and
Oh.
you know
Well, they
wanted
missed
the
it.
end of
It's
the world
happening
to-
now.
Yeah, right.
How wrong they are.
Oh.
How wrong.
It's just
Wow.
it's crazy. I mean, and the sad thing is, I don't know if I'm finished with my notes. I need to check back. Yeah, I am done with what I was doing. The sad thing is all these people, like the 900 people, they weren't doing this because they were messed up as him. They were doing this because they thought they were doing something right. Because they were
Yeah.
building this world that was not going to have any racism. It wasn't going to have any bad stuff. It was supposed to be like the sanctuary for everybody involved, and a lot of people were on board with that. And that's why a lot of people were going with him, even though he was crazy, because they trusted him that he was going to give them what they wanted.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's kind of interesting that, yeah, like, because there's no internet. You have never heard of anything like this. You hear someone saying, like, oh, you see all this, like, segregation and stuff that's been happening. Like, this was between the 50s through 70s. Like, of all this stuff that's going on, he can create a better place for everyone that, of course, everyone would want to go to an accepting place and believe that it's real. And people wouldn't really have a reason to believe it's not real. That's why it's, what's the full name of it? Like, the Disciples? Like, it has disciples
Oh.
in it, right?
Yeah, hang on. It says it's the People's Temple of the Disciples of Christ.
Yeah, because like Jesus himself had not blind followers, but like the followers. That it's like
You had people
the
following.
similar parallels, and like yeah, this is one of those like religious cults, and there's modern day examples, which maybe we'll do more of modern day cults. But
That'd be interesting. Yeah.
yeah, like that. Yeah, it's very interesting.
So Gavin, now once we all have heard about this Jonestown cult and everything, what are your overall thoughts about this?
I feel like there's a lot of interesting little facts that were probably dead giveaways that this wasn't good. The fact that when people started to say bad things, he like basically ran away to South America, that was probably a big dead giveaway. And the fact that it took how long for them to like really look into it. Like this should have been like probably a higher priority, but I mean, I guess it was before the time of the internet and people really like if it was nowadays, people would be tweeting about it, like it would be out there, like it wouldn't last long. But
Trending
yeah,
on Twitter.
that
Yeah.
also like the fact like the Kool-Aid thing, and then like the don't drink the Kool-Aid, like did we know, did that become a saying after the fact of like, because I know
thought it was
Yeah.
before. I
don't
heard
drink
it
the
was
Kool-Aid is
before.
like a saying. I think that's like one of those sayings where like almost like a peer pressure kind of thing, where it's like don't succumb to
No,
peer pressure
it
or
was
something.
supposedly that whole saying. This is what my dad was explaining, but I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just to kind of sum it up. It's when like someone kind of supports something.
Like a blind,
I
like
don't know,
blindly
this is my dad-
following
It's like
something.
blindly following.
So
Yeah,
not
kinda like-
necessarily, yeah,
That's what.
not necessarily peer pressuring, more so
Mhm.
if you blindly follow something. That don't necessarily follow something if you don't know exactly what's going on, because it could be like don't drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah.
Right.
So Chris, what are your overall thoughts since you are the presenter and the researcher?
This was one of those things that I went into it because I wanted to know more about the cult, but this ended up being more about the story about it, and this was a crazy story. Like I thought this was like a movie at first. Like this can't be real. Like a congressman died.
Did they-
a government
Did they recover
government-
the reporters' footage and stuff? Is that how they found
Yeah,
all of this out?
yeah.
That it was
That's
recovered?
all on YouTube. Every speech of
Really?
Jim Jones is on YouTube. Like he recorded every single speech that he did, and those are all out there.
Really?
The footage
Wow.
is out there of people getting shot. Like
Yeah.
the news. So the when the camera crew shot when he was at Jonestown, and they have all that stuff. There's also a ton of stuff that I didn't even include. Like there's a whole thing about this guy going to Georgetown to find his daughter, and then she ended up being so messed up by this cult, and she was basically gone. And then there was another kid that was like also playing. But there's a whole ton of stuff
Yeah,
that
but
I
there's
didn't
so many
include.
other things.
Oh yeah, there's a ton.
I mean,
of
yeah,
stuff.
it sounds like you just gave us a very brief half-hour summary that like there's
Yeah.
so much that can go into it, and then people researching, looking back all the footage and like all the stuff that happens, like over the span of years, I'm sure there were so many other little
Oh my
things that
God.
happened that like probably still stuff that we don't know about. Leah, what are your takeaways from this? Any little tidbits you enjoyed?
I mean, this is very interesting. I think this whole story is really depressing, and
Yeah.
I definitely, of course, I'm gonna look more into this. Maybe try and steer a little bit away from the depressing stuff.
I don't know
'Cause,
if I'm gonna
like,
watch the videos, but I think I'm definitely gonna
I
read
don't
some more
think I
about
will
it.
ever touch those videos, and I
Yeah.
don't think I'd ever want to watch those type of videos. But I think this is something where people can kind of learn to be
Yeah.
careful in what you follow, because there could be something else underneath what you're following that could be really suspicious, and you don't want to get into. But overall, this was very informational and very sad and depressing. But so yeah, I think overall this was a very interesting story, and of course there are a lot of other different type of cults and conspiracies out there, which we're definitely gonna cover in the future podcast. But thank you, Chris, for this
Yeah,
very
this was definitely
interesting.
this is one of the bigger
podcast.
ones because then, I mean, it goes by the name Jonestown Massacre, and obviously now we know why it's considered a massacre. And I mean, there's all the different conspiracies with, I mean, it's called a massacre, but like, was it genocide or a suicide and all the
Was it
different
mass
things? And
murder?
there's
What was it? Yeah.
plenty to talk about it, as we've been talking
Yeah.
for a little bit.
So I want to thank you, Chris, again, and Gavin for joining us on this podcast. It's very, like you said, lighthearted,
Yes,
lovely
very
podcast.
lighthearted.
If you guys are interested in listening to more of our podcasts, please check out our podcast profile, as well as follow us on Instagram at This Strange World Podcast. And if you have any suggestions, just email or DM us. We will have all
Comment.
the information in our bio.
If you can comment
like,
or leave
share.
reviews wherever you're listening to this, do it. Rate us,
Exactly.
whatever platform you're listening to this on.
All right, so thank you guys so much again, and you'll have a new podcast coming out next week, so keep your eyes and ears open for that, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
I'm not saying bye.
No, that's it.
You don't need to say bye.
I'm gonna put
Cut
that
that
in.
out.
Was I talking too much?
I said bye.
No, I thought that was great. If you want more of This Strange World, you can listen to us wherever you get your podcasts, and you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at This Strange World Podcast and on Twitter at This Strange Pod. Now it's time to go through all of our sources because we didn't come up with any of this. We didn't make any of this up. This is real. And Chris
This is
read
a real
about it,
thing.
and this came from places. Chris, where did you find all of this lovely, really lighthearted readings and videos, research?
Oh, most of the research came from videos that I found with
Let's give some
news
credit.
reports. And, yeah, let's give them credit. So most of my stuff came from this YouTube channel called True Stories, and one of the big ones that I took a lot of information from was this video from True Stories. It was called Return to Jonestown, and it had a bunch of survivors visit the site 40 years after the tragedy happened, and that's where they went through a lot of the some of the stories of these
Yeah.
people and what they saw. And then another video that I saw was very appropriately titled The Jonestown Massacre from the same YouTube channel, Real Stories. This one's a little bit longer, but this goes into more of the stories about the basketball game that happened and about the people that were in Georgetown and not in Jonestown. So there's a bunch of those, fun stuff.
Was that it? Was there just two?
Well, another source that I got was from ABC News. This is called Jonestown. Who was the People's Temple leader? Jim Jones? ? And so this was a four-part documentary from ABC News on their YouTube channel about Jonestown. And that was where I got a lot of my information from as well.
Great. Is that all of them?
That is all of them.